Boker Tov, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. So good to be here with you on this Shabbat as we launch into open book and Torah study. And this morning, Rabbi Ingber and myself will be co-leading open book on Ki Tisa, which is an amazing, amazing parsha. So let's begin with the blessing over the Torah. Jonathan Perlman, would you lead us in the blessing? Rabbi Ingber, can people unmute themselves, or are we?
Yeah, let 1 second, making sure. Jonathan Perlman, go ahead.
בוקר טוב, שבת שלום. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו רוח העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה.
Amen. Amen. Hopefully everybody's ready to soak into Torah. We have such a juicy parsha, Ki Tisa, which has so much in it. I've always been, can people hear the church bells in the background right now? It's the West End Presbyterian across the street. I've always been fascinated by the notion of panim al panim, seeing God or really not seeing God face to face. And on one hand, the Torah holds out this possibility of intimacy and then denies us that intimacy at the same moment, right? And there's so much about the danger of that intimacy. And in our parsha itself, it's danger, intimacy. It's like all over the parsha, like exactly that conflict. The notion of panim el panim first appears in Breshit, in Genesis, when Jacob is wrestling with the angel, and afterwards he says, I have seen God face to face and I've survived. So already that notion of danger, of, can I see God face to face and survive? And then in our parsha, God's saying to Moshe, no, you can't see my face and live. No person can do that. No Adam can do that. So we're going to dive into some of those notions and ask the question of, what is this danger of intimacy with the divine? And what danger do we live with? Like, do we live with the danger of seeing one another face to face? Is that dangerous? Do we still feel that sense of danger in facing the divine? Do we, Bnei Israel, right, the children of Israel felt that overwhelmingly, right? At Sinai, they were afraid of dying at just hearing God's voice. So what's the danger that we live with? And how do we approach that danger or not approach that danger? So Rabbi Ingber, do you want to add any thoughts to that? Can't hear you right now. You're muted.
The stream deck is not working. So yes, no, I think that was really beautiful. Really well done, well framed, and I'm looking forward to the text that we're going to look at together.
Okay, wonderful. So let's do a few opening texts, and then we'll invite the kahal, the community, to jump into this discussion. So first of all, we can see the golden calf itself and Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, creating the golden calf as a gesture towards wanting intimacy with God, but being terrified of intimacy with God. So they created it at a moment when they've already been overwhelmed by the Sinai experience, and Moshe, or their perception is Moshe has completely abandoned them, right? So they need, and they feel, they feel exposed to the divine fire. There's a line that says they see God as a consuming fire, right? And in response, they create a golden calf, and one could see gold, right, specifically as a fixing of the wildness of that fire. Like, how do we contain that fire? So here, in the first text, after the sin, Moshe is desperate for God to continue God's relationship with Bnei Israel, with the children of Israel, and to travel along with them. And God says to them in verse 3, Lo e'eleh b'kirbecha ki am kashe oref atam pen achlecha baderach. So I will not go in your midst, since you are a stiff-necked people. lest I destroy you on the way. So there's something about the interaction with God and this stiff-neckedness that is very dangerous and can end up in destruction. And it's translated as destroy you, but it's specifically consume you, which is exactly reflects the scary image that the children of Israel have of God, which is a consuming God. And to me, it also echoes some of our own fears of intimacy. We're afraid of being consumed in some way by the other. Rabbi Ingber, any responses to this particular text?
Yeah, I think that the consuming quality, achaleh, and it very much comes back to the in the bush, the burning bush theophany, right? V'hasneh einenu ukal. Like there's something remarkable about proximity to the divine that brings an immediate sense of being consumed. It's funny to think of consumerism and being consumed, right? Like there's something about this and the word also achaleh also is le'echol, is the same letters. It's not the same word, like lechalot, but this also appears in as a light word, as a word in the parsha. The word you'll see it later, kechaloto, like where kechaloto, when God finishes speaking, and kaltan nafshi, like that there's something of an ambiguity and an ambivalence between the desire to be consumed, as it were, by the divine that we want so much, to be, as it were, for this to be subsumed, to be obliterated in a divine annihilation that isn't dangerous, but that is blissful, and yet at the same time, the danger of being on the knife's edge between, a consummation that is desired and a consummation that is dangerous. And I love that you brought that here, because pen achaleh is also the word pen, lest I in the Hebrew is pen, there is an ambivalence in this word pen, which is both I hope that it doesn't happen, but also I hope that it does happen. That is in the it's in the pen yimusheni avi, when Jacob says, I hope that my father doesn't touch my Esau skins and know that the jig is up and that I've been a liar. And I've spoken about this, that there are commentators that say that that's it's kind of like, I hope he doesn't, I hope he does, I hope he does find me out, I hope he doesn't. And you brought it out here so beautifully, that this danger that is also fraught. It's kind of a fraught phrase.
So it's so interesting they bring up Moshe at the bush and the bush not being consumed, because Moshe is the one who did not grow up as a slave in Egypt. And somehow he has the ability to witness God's fire and not see it as consuming, right? And Bnei Israel see it as consuming. Like they don't have that capacity. And the other thing you're bringing up about Esav and Jacob, like that's the first masking of the face, right? That's the first deception, right? Like they can't bear to look one another in the face and see what the truth of their family is.
It's very beautiful. And it's also, I had never seen this before, but the word pen, of course, in lest is also the word panim.
Whoa.
I never saw that before.
Whoa.
Really beautiful. The pen here is, and that the word face appears like 85 times in the Torah. It's like, it's a very big, in some form or another, and especially if you go through this parsha, you see the word pen in a number of different forms, like lifanecha here in verse 2, and penei and panim, but I had never seen in this one phrase that pen achelcha, which means lest you be consumed, also can mean the face that consumes. Pen achel, achelcha,
Wow.
and it's wow.
So, let's go down for 1 second, look at the next text briefly and open it up to people's comments.
Okay, this text will cut off on the bottom. So here it is, and then on the other side, it'll
So this is a text where, Moshe says, with desperation and yearning and hunger, Har'eni na et kvodecha, like please show me your kavod, your presence. And what does God say? Vayomer ani avir kol tuvi al panecha. I'll show you all my goodness, all my stuff, right? That word tov, that's a resonance from creation, right? When God keeps saying vayhi tov. The karati b'shem Adonai lefanecha, and I will call before you the name of God.
Right.
Right. V'chanoti et asher achon v'richamti et asher arachem. And then this line, Vayomer lo tuchal l'rot et panai, you cannot see my face. Ki lo your ani ha'adam b'chai. Your ani ha'adam b'chai. So a human being cannot see my face and live. So is that because, do you think, that there's something so overwhelming about the divine face that we can't actually continue being human and witness that face directly? Like it's not within the human capacity. Okay, let's open it up to the community, unless Rabbi Amber, you want to say something before we do that.
No, I listen. I love to hear voices. I know that the simple meaning of the text is kind of an ambivalence that is in this encounter, the ambivalence of the mysterium tremendum, as Rudolf Otto called it, or the numinous that can be overwhelming, and that can, and I don't want to go to the East yet, because I know that the mystics of the tradition and the Eastern traditions can read this in a particular valence. And I think that, and I use that term valence here decidedly because I think that the simple meaning of this text is an expression of divine ambivalence, right? That the text is expressing both God's desire for intimacy and God's recognition that God can be too much. And that, like the kid that, oh, you're too much. Like humanity has said to God often, you're too much. And God, in the divine encounter, has the ambivalence of God's own inability to contain God's own power at times. And that can be overwhelming for us. And at the same time, I think that, you're bringing this out, that that there's still a desire. Like Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, Har'eni na et kvodecha. It's like, I really want to know you. It's so deep, right? And he wants it. So, and there are, of course, a lot of very beautiful midrashic and mystical interpretations here. And certainly, one of them is that you can't see my face, because if were you to see my face, you would still be an object in awareness. But once one is united with the divine, and we can hear Nehemiah speaking here, and Nehemiah would say, like, once you're one with God, then there, of course, you can't see God's face because you are God's face. And there's no way to see something that you are, right? So there's a lot here, right? And I remember when I was a young student, I thought that this meant that, of course, you can't see my face, you'll see my back of my head, meant that we were in a hug with God. And to hug God is better than to see God's face, because when you're hugging God, you see only the back of the head, but you're so close, it's even beyond your face, like you're behind each other. But all of that doesn't really capture the radical disappointment here also of, I'm going to put you into a rock and you won't see my face. You can only see chorai, the back of my head, and not my face, which is really, there's a certain tragic element to this conversation between God, and confusing too, because later on we know that God says, you do see my face. So it's a little bit confusing. I think it's good for us to pause and to invite others to weigh in. So a lot of hands are up, Rabbi Diane, a lot.
I see that. Oh my God. Well, that's wonderful. So I often ask people to be concise, but no one ever listens. So so we get a lot of voices on the table. So I'm just going to go in the order that I see them.
You could also mute people. You give them 30 seconds and then.
Yeah, 30 seconds mute. You know what? Yeah, I'll let you do that.
No, I won't do that. No.
Okay, I'm going to go. Here's a lineup for now. Asher Chaim, Mark Horn, Jonathan Perlman, Daniel Berlin, and Jay Broadbar.
There's also Joe St. George was also there. Did you see?
You're right. I did. And then she for some reason, she's the end of my line. But help me keep track of this lineup. Thank you.
Okay.
Asher, Chaim.
Very briefly, from a course on counseling, at one extreme, we're afraid of being abandoned. On the other extreme, we're afraid of being swallowed up or engulfed. And I really appreciate what you taught in the Moshe course about the people's fear of abandonment at Sinai when Moshe is up on the mountain, they don't know where he is. That's the fear of abandonment. And here there's the equal legitimate fear that God will simply swallow us up. Ibarti.
Thank you. Rabbi Ingrid, do you want to say anything? Okay, I like the way you expanded the story. Thank you. Mark Horn.
So I will do my best to be concise while I say three different things. The first thing is danger, intimacy, danger, intimacy. How are you listening in on my therapy sessions? Second, the quote, I will make all my goodness pass before you. And I was thinking, oh, well, that means in order for anybody to sort of see the divine has to split because God is beyond goodness. And so, and a human couldn't possibly take in the duality of the goodness and what is beyond goodness. So I think
that's fascinating.
And I think that's the blast that sort of knocks us out of consciousness and takes us out of, because it takes us out of the duality of our own existence. And then to speak to Rabbi Ingber's, a quote about, or a discussion about hugging and being behind, all I could think of was Margaret Dumont saying to Groucho Marx, hold me closer, closer, and Groucho saying, if I were any closer, I'd be behind you.
The other thing about being behind somebody, and this I learned from Rabbi Michael Paley, is that you're seeing what they're seeing. So if Moshe is standing behind God, then Moshe is seeing the divine view. So that's interesting. And I love what you're saying about Tuvi, about goodness. I've never thought about that before, about like God splitting. And finally, I think it's the Torah is sort of a collective exposure of all our therapy sessions, not just yours, Mark. And of course, I'm not speaking from experience. Okay, Jonathan.
We need to go back to Joe St. George.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Joe St. George.
Hi.
Hi, Joe.
Shabbat Shalom. The duality, we are sensual beings with eyes, nose, mouth, hand, made in the image of God. And that's the beauty of who we are, is we are both a reflection of his physical being as he reveals it to us. But he wants us to be more focused on what his character is, his heart. And that's why he wants us to see. He says, I want to show you my glory. And every description is the character of who he is, because we can get caught up in what we see versus being changed and transformed by the character that's revealed to us. And I can say that I just got out of the hospital last night, and I sent a picture of friends of me being in the hospital. And my friend said, oh, you look so pretty. And I'm like, what does my beauty have to do with how I'm feeling? I feel like a Mack truck hit me. And that's the danger. We get consumed with what we see, as opposed to recognizing the feelings and the emotions that a person is feeling at the time. And that's what God wants us to understand, his heart and who he is in character. But I love the hug, and I'm screaming and hollering and having a Holy Ghost dance right now.
Joe, that was so beautiful. And I hope you're feeling better. I really hope you're feeling better. And the other thing I wanted to say in response to what you're saying is something I learned from Asher Chaim, that all over in our Moshe class, all over this passage and this conversation between Moshe and God, is God kind of redirecting Moshe from the visual to the oral, A-U-R-A-L. So as if to say to the essence or the heart of things, not just what Moshe can see.
And I think that's borne out also in the Hebrew. The word panim, of course, and panimiyut are very much connected. But the word pan, or face, or perspective, or the surface, the face of the surfaces, has a double meaning, of course, in Hebrew, which also points towards interiority and towards the inside. And so in a way, what you're saying is you'll see the back of my head, God says, meaning by my, like, know me through my character, know me through the world, but don't be worried about seeing my face, God says. You don't have to worry about my face. My face
Right,
is
not the surfaces, not the pretty surfaces. It's just exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay, who's our next? Oh, Jonathan was our next person.
Yeah.
So just to continue with what Rabbi David said, I think in modern Hebrew, pan is usually an aspect of something. And I never really made the connection that panim, of course, is plural and Elohim is plural. So like the two crucial pieces, I mean, here in this section, this is a J document of the Torah. So it's Yud He Vav He. But if you go back to the burning bush, Elohim appears there. So one way to read it is it's impossible to know the 70 aspects, panim, faces of God. In the same way, it's impossible to know the 70 aspects or panim of a human being. So it's like the unknowingness that I think in some ways is scary, that we'll never be able to grasp it. We'll never be able to grasp the true interiority of a human being or of the spirit.
Beautiful, Jonathan. And it also brings me back to the notion of masks on Purim, right? And the divine notion of masks, putting them on, taking them off. And one notion of idolatry is mistaking the part for the whole. And we do that with each other all the time. Like, oh, they're so full of themselves. But maybe they're full of themselves at one moment and not another, right? And the golden calf is an attempt at fixing God in one place and one form. Right. And getting your fix, like, oh, I need my fix. Right. I can't stand all this fluidity. Rabbi Ingber.
And in that reading also, what Jonathan's offering here is something that, often when I meet with couples to talk about Jewish rituals around the wedding, and we talk about the circling that was traditionally done by the bride of the groom and so on, but now it's kind of like, lovers circle one another, the circling business. And through what you're saying here, Jonathan, it really reminds me of, it just gave me an insight into something about the story, is that the word panim, face, in numerology is 180. And if you took panim and panim together, it turns into a circle, 360. And in a way, it makes me think that maybe what God was saying to Moshe, I never heard it this way, was not as a consolation of, you can't see my face, I'll let you see the back of my head because nobody can see my face. But he was also saying that just like you, I need your help to see the back of my head. I can't see the back of my own head. We all have blind spots, and we all have perspectives and angles and aspects of panim that we need a 360-degree circle, as it were. And that's what we do for one another, is that we show each other, the objects in the rear view mirror are much closer than what we think they are. And so there's a quality here that you're bringing forth, which is the multi-perspectival reality that all of us live in, and that for completion, we need one another. We need one another. Thank you for that.
Rabbi Ingber, we have a lot more hands, and we haven't gotten to like the centerpiece text.
All right. You're the teacher. Tell you got.
I thought we're the teachers. Oh my God, my truth is only partial.
That's true.
Okay, why don't we take 3 more comments, do some more text, and then open it up again. Okay, so Rabbi Ingber, who's on deck now?
Nehemiah, Margot, and Jay.
Nehemiah.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
Kehila Kedusha, and Yeshar Koach for all the beautiful pearls that I heard so far. It brings me to one of the top spiritual experiences of my life that I won't be able to communicate in words, but I'll do my best. I'm sitting in silence among many other people in a silent retreat in India, in the ashram. And through divine grace, I disappear, and I'm only a point of consciousness watching the universe. I come back a little bit to myself and I'm able to utter words. I can't speak them aloud because people around me are in silence. So I think to myself, every day is a great day to die. Every day is a great day to die. And I sing it with joy. Every day is a great day to die. And I feel it. To die to your ego every day. And I believe it's possible still. But if you ask me to die now to my ego when I'm in front of all of you, I said, oh, I'm not ready at the moment. So I hope we all be ready for it gradually. דיברתי. אכלה, that's mean to אכלה, to completely die to yourself before you die. דיברתי.
Nati. Thank you.
Shamati.
Nehemiah. Margot?
Okay, Tov. I was going to invoke Maimonides and Einstein, and I also want to invoke Joe. Beautiful comments, Yasher Kochachem. Hareini et kvodecha. We can't even come close to understanding the awe-inspiring characteristics of the universe. I mean, we're made out of stardust. We can't see it. We can't understand the billions of galaxies. It's just so far beyond us, especially if we only use our vision. As Einstein said, I want to know God's thoughts. Well, that's what Moses is saying. What hubris! I want to know God's thoughts. You can't. It's just impossible. But as Joe said, what if we look without our eyes? What if we look with our hearts? Then we can begin to approach it. And then only begin to approach it. It's just so far beyond us. I love the hug. We can try to embrace it. But to be alive means to be separate from God, to have this certain amount of separation. And that's a good thing. So I'm gonna provide another angle from Nehemiah's. To not be alive means to be part of the universe, but to be alive is a wondrous thing. And that's something we can't understand fully either. There are universes inside of us as much as there are universes outside. That's like that fractal thing. And so we can approach it and we can see God's goodness. That's the thing God wants us to see. That's the thing God needs us to see, to be B'Tselem Elohim, the compassion and the grace and the love. So that's what we need to experience. And then we'll experience God. Acharai, we can see the effects, the impacts. We see there are babies born. We see there are flowers. We see there are galaxies, and we know God's been there. We've seen the after effects. Shemati.
Marco, that was so, so beautiful. And it reminds me that Moshe dies al pi Adonai, by the mouth of God. And, the rabbis say by God's kiss. It seems like Moshe finally got that full face-to-face encounter, and that was his death. Right? We have those texts. I don't know if we'll get there, but we have those texts on the source sheet. Okay, Jay.
Shabbat Shalom. Something just came up, and I just have to give this perspective of my 4-year-old daughter, which I think is relevant. When she was that age, she used to say, "Oh, I know that like the back of my head." And I always thought that was kind of cute. And I thought about it, and realized, yes, there are some things that are in the back of our heads that only we could know, and clearly. And so there's that other piece of not being able to really know what another knows because you can't be in the back of their head. But I wanted to really talk about fire, which is where you started, because it seems to me two things. First, I think fire is the primal epitome of ambivalence. How many of us have not sat around a campfire and been mesmerized by its beauty, wanting to almost touch it, and at the same time knowing that if a spark goes into the woods or if we touch it, it could be extremely dangerous. So I think in its essence, fire is beauty and ambivalence. And also, I think it's probably the first source of artificial or person-made light. So what we can see and what we can't see also is connected to fire in a very primal way. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's a beautiful image, sitting before the campfire. And I often think of like human relationships that way as well. Like how do we manage, right, the desire and the danger, and Okay, I think we're ready for the next text. Yeah, Rabbi Ingber?
Which one would you like me to go to?
Let's go to the Masveh text. I think if we don't go there now, we're never going to get there, basically.
Okay. Here it is, number 4.
Yeah, why don't you take this one?
Sure. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe. So God said to Moshe, Ksav lecha sadvarim ha'eleh. Write these things down for yourself. Ki al pi advarim ha'eleh, through the mouth of these things, or according to these things that I will give you, karati itecha brit. I have split with you a splitting. I have made a covenant with you, and with Israel. Ve'ed Israel. Vayisham im Adonai arba'im yom ve'arbim layla lechem lo achal, and he was there with God 40 days and 40 nights. Bread he didn't eat. Mayim lo shasai, didn't drink any water. Vayichtov al aluchos es divrei habris aseres hadvarim, and written onto the tablets the words of the covenant of the agreement. These 10 things, these 10 speech acts.
So interesting that Moshe's name is not in that verse. In verse 28.
Right. It is very interesting. Even though, of course, Sham is also Moshe without the hey, but Vahi Sham.
Ah.
No, it's true. It's not there. I also thought it's very interesting that it's just a pronoun. And he was there, and was there. Vahi beredes Moshe mehar Sinai ushnei luchot ha'ivdut biyad Moshe. Verse 29, and when he came down, beredet, when he descended from the mountain of Sinai, he held with him the 2 tablets of witnessing in the hands of Moshe. Beridito minahar. Right? They were in his hand when he came down from the mountain. Moshe lo yada, and Moshe does not know. Ki karan or panav bidabro ito. This is what I spoke about last night with Saint Jerome. And Moses did not know, which is also so powerful, like the not knowing of Moshe here in all of the Torah. Whenever you don't know something, it's not a good thing. Like not knowing. So he doesn't know. And kikaran, for his skin of his face, in speaking with him, ito, with him, had become karan. Right? It was karan. It was, right? It was illuminated. It was beaming. Vayar Aaron v'chol bnei Yisrael Moshe v'hinei karan or panav. And Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses. And behold, v'hinei, karan or panav. And his face, the skin of his face had become karan. Vayir'u, and they were terrified, migeshet elav. They were afraid to approach him. Vayikra leihem Moshe vayashuvu elav Aaron v'chol nesiim ba'ida, verse 31. And Moshe called out to them, and they came back. Aaron and all of the princes came back. And so then he spoke with them. Vaydaber Moshe alehem. They had run away, apparently, everybody. And so he said, come back. So they would speak with him. V'acherechein nigeshu kol bnei Yisrael. And then afterwards, in verse 32, and this is interesting, v'acherechein, also the word v'achere, I did not notice this either before. Like you'll see my achere, there's a kind of after that's happening here too. And after that, the children of Israel would come to Moshe, vayitzaveim, and he would command them, and he would command them concerning all the things that Adonai had spoken to him, with him, on the mountain of Sinai, verse 33, Vayechal Moshe midaber itam. And Moshe finished speaking with them, Vayiten al panav masveh. And then when he finished with them, he would then place on his face a veil, a masveh. Uvivo Moshe lifnei Adonai lidaber ito yasir et masveh ad teto. And when Moses would go in to speak with Yerevav, he would take off the masveh until he left. V'yatza, and then he would leave. V'diber b'nei Yisrael et asher yitzuveh. And then he would speak to the children of Israel all that he had been commanded. V'ra'u b'nei Yisrael pnei Moshe ki karan or pnei Moshe. And the children of Israel saw again pnei Moshe, the face of Moshe, ki karan or pnei Moshe, that the skin of the face of Moshe, repeated here, had become karan, karen, illuminate or beams or horns. V'heshiv Moshe et masvel panav, and then Moshe would place or replace the mask or the veil onto his face, ad ba'ol ledaber ito, until he would return to speak with God.
Yeah, wow. So I think it's such a beautiful act of compassion, this veil, like understanding that the Israelites can't take that much light.
Do you want me to continue the screen share, Diane?
Just a couple more things. One is, and we talked about this before in our chavruta when we were studying together, that masveh is at least an oral play on mitzvah or mitzvah, right? All this stuff about instruction and command sounds like veil. And we were talking about how perhaps the commandment, the Judaism that's created from commandments, are created from all these veils because we can't access God directly.
So I love that. That was your chidush. That was your, your insight in your novel hearing. You were talking about an oral tradition, A-U-R-A-L, like you heard the sound of masveh and mitzuveh, and also their juxtaposition in the same verse, spoke to you that commandments, religion in general, maybe ethical and moral obligations are a kind of necessary veiling of an immediacy of divine light for the sake of the one who would otherwise be burned or hurt or in danger from that intimacy, that we need these veils because our fear of being engulfed, as Asher Chaim said, is so profound that there's a kind of necessary protective quality that comes from tzivoy, from obligation or from commitments or from covenant, right? I think that's where you were going, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a veil is beautiful if it's like diaphanous, like if some of the light comes through, but when it ceases being transparent in that way, then it feels just like a series of blocks, like just barriers, like the way I experience a mechitza in in an Orthodox synagogue, which is just unblocked.
Totally. I'm frozen here for some reason.
I know you were frozen. You were blocked.
I'm blocked.
We hear your voice, which is even more important than seeing you.
Right? Kilo your ani adam v'chai. I'm not. It's not live. So, maybe you can call on some people here.
Sure.
The voice from.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, Daniel, Luma, Alana, Leonard, Marilyn. Daniel Berlin.
So at the heart of this conversation is this panim el panim unpacking. And face and seeing for me are metaphors. They're not the experience. The experience of panim el panim has to do with presence. It has to do with that interiority that is an awareness that is within us. It's a very deep interior experience, but in some ways, it's the simplest and most accessible experience that we have moment to moment, that our awareness, our presence, our panim, our divine self is actually available and accessible at every moment. And your brilliant statement about we mistake the part for the whole. We mistake our fears of engulfment, our fears of abandonment, and we project that onto the awareness, onto the core of who we are. What is so gorgeous about Moses and Jacob is that they both have this experience of intimacy that is completely trustworthy of the divine. The divine is that awareness, that presence that says, I will be with you, Jacob. I will be with you. I am with you. Inside of you, it's there. You can trust that. It's a calm presence.
I love what you're saying about it always being accessible. And I try to remember these days. I don't know if you have days where like they're so awful that you just want to say, oh, forget. There's no hope for this day. You just kind of want to throw in the towel. And I remind myself on those days that God is also with me, that there's still possibility.
Right. So we have to be careful of projecting onto the divine those fears or seeing God as like this consuming fire. Those are projections of parts of us. That's not the baseline and ground being for me of Yud-He Vav-He within me. It is a trustworthy place. It's a makom that actually can hold any fear, any brokenness, any trauma, and will never be afraid. That's not what the divine presence is or does.
Okay, thank you. Thank
in
you.
my
for
experience.
for
It's a source of
experience.
healing. The source of healing.
Thank you. Beautiful. Aluma. You're not unmuted for some reason. There you go.
I think a lot of what I wanted to ask and say has been said. However, this idea of the fear of being consumed, I'm very curious. That has to do with self-negation. And once one self-negates, that fear of consumption isn't there. That's one question. The other question or statement I think a lot of people have said is this idea of seeing is more of an inner seeing. It's something that's felt. It's a felt sense. It's not necessarily something that you see. It's something that's felt. And the inner seeing in this felt sense has to do with the inner part of the Peniot. And the whole idea of Moses having to fail himself, the people not being able to do him.
Your audio is not great. Maybe, is it possible to be a little louder?
I'll try. The idea of people not being able to tolerate the light of Moses's face. I'm wondering how much of that has to do with people not being able to see not so much the light of God, but the light of themselves. It's the inner reflection that Moses has that people aren't able to see what they indeed have themselves. So it needs to be covered.
That's beautiful. So seeing that brilliance, they can't somehow access their own brilliance?
Yeah, or they're kind of afraid of that. And that's kind of what has to be masked until they're able to tap into it on their own.
And emerge as that as sort of a being on the same level as Moshe, which they're not yet, but they may emerge as. Rabbi Ingber, are you still with us? Oh, I don't see you. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think the next person is Alana.
Thanks. When we read the first passage, it made me think about parenting and sort of God as like a parent, or in parenting, this idea, I was just really struck of like, lest I destroy you, of sort of this like, I want to come close, I want to be there, but how do I not overpower the child and have like space for the kid also? And the kid wants to be so close, but the tension of like kind of the kid wanting you to be there and not be there. And then like your emotions as an older person sort of potentially being bigger. That kind of came to mind. But then and then in contrast, just that like sort of there's like that line, but then later on we're talking about sort of, and God is kind of veiling God's self, right? And then Moses comes down and Moses veils himself from the people. I don't know. I just was sort of struck, like, I don't know what, I don't have more to say. Just it really reminded me of sort of the experience that I have sometimes with parenting and like this, in the God role or maybe in the Moses role, as a parent need to be like everything and be there. But then sometimes you can't show your whole self to your kids because they don't have the ability to maybe see it or be with your emotions in the same way that like there's a veiling or a shutting down or not a sharing of everything.
Yeah, a parent has to constantly engage in the practice of tzimtzum, right? I know, I mean, now as a parent of like young adults and teenagers, I feel like, the need and the danger is like all over that relationship, right? The coming close and being pushed away. And you know, yeah, the yearning and the blocking, absolutely. And I'm really moved by the veiling, because it feels like it's a recognition and a listening to the people's capacity at that moment.
Right. And then it's just like that it sort of started. He came down, the people saw it. He wasn't aware of it. And then they went away and then came back to him. And, you know, so they're like that sometimes maybe you don't get it right at first.
Yeah. And also like contracting and engaging in some can allow someone else to approach you.
Yeah.
And also like that sometimes we don't actually know. I'm back, by the way. And so I think also that the unconsciousness here is also a kind of a primal innocence in a way. Like he didn't know. And here the not knowing is a kind of lack of self-awareness that only can come with this kind of this grain of sand irritation that comes from recognizing that others pulled away. Sometimes they pull away because of their own stuff, but sometimes it also, we are not aware of how strong we can be and how strong we can come on and how much light is being, right? We don't really realize it until the other, it's kind of a calibration. It's an attunement that's happening between like a dance of intersubjectivity. Jessica Benjamin would call this a dance of intersubjectivity. Like they see in the way that the other pulls away that, you know, maybe we should put our mask on a little bit and then they'll be able to come back. And that's a very powerful Tzimtzum, as we called it last week.
And I think the Torah is a beautiful illustration of that in terms of like the God as an iterative self and identity, right? God keeps pulling back so the children of Israel can move forward and approach.
And in the way that you've been teaching this today, Diane, you know, Rabbi Kohler says you essentially, like this leaves a lot of room when we move from the interpersonal and the human to the, let's say, Jewish history or the notion of revelation, that maybe revelation at Sinai was there was too much light. And that part of this commandedness, masveh, mitzvah thing that you're bringing out is also leaving room for what's called progressive revelation. Like God is attuning to how much we as human beings can handle in each generation. And as we unpack more and more ethical and moral clarity, it's a kind of attunement, the way that no different than what Ilana was saying about children, like moving this dance, right? So love that.
Right. Rabbis themselves see Sinai as a moment where the children of Israel don't have any choice regarding the covenant. But the book of Esther, without God's name, is the place where the children of Israel come into their own and sort of write down the laws for their own holiday, right? They're taking on the religion in an active way, right? But only when God is masked, though. Okay, I think we're up to Leonard, and then we'll figure out what our next steps are. Go ahead.
Thinking about the what we want to know, what we don't want to know, the ambivalence about seeing someone's face, because if I can see God's face, I may know some things I don't want to know about what might be happening. And of course, God, if he sees my face, he can see my imperfections, my doubts, which I don't want him to see those things. And sometimes, as we're talking about how we protect children, we want to protect them from the bad things that might happen, and so we hide that. And as adults, we need to deny some of the bad things. It's hard to get up and keep going if I know some really bad things are going to be happening soon. I have to ignore that, otherwise I'm not going to get up and go to work and do the things I need to do.
So we need the veils to survive and just function, right? When does the veil come off, and does it like kind of stop us in our tracks when it does? Yeah, no, I think that is a great point. Okay, Rabbi Ingber, do you want to go back to some text, or we're going to take more hands?
I just want to say, yeah, there are a lot of hands. I think we're just going to cancel this morning's Tefillah service and just continue with the open book for the next hour. My son, one of my children said to me this week about getting a scrape on his skin, and he said how sensitive the skin is, but how strong it is, and that more often than not, he said infections come not from the scrape on the skin, but from what happens after the skin has been, as it were, scraped, because then it exposes, and then and so it's kind of interesting here that this place where protection happens is on the skin, which of course is someone once called us skin encapsulated egos, like where our separateness from the world is manifest, is where we're most porous, but also the most profoundly, like that's where exposure happens, but also where we're protected. And it's really a remarkable, like the masveh on Moshe's face is a masveh on a masveh. It's like a double secret, like this remarkable image of how the ego, as it were, is the skin on the self, and how this is, the importance of having this, and how law becomes also, we talked about this earlier, Rabbi Koloresis and I, about how the great 20th century philosopher Emmanuel Levinas actually said that the veil is what gets in the way of an ethical and moral obligation, that in the sense that we don't see one another's naked, he called it decent nudity. The face is where he called is the locus of transcendence, that the face is the Aron Kodesh, right? That in some way he would argue that all of the ways that we use law and other expressions of policy to get in the way of the basic recognition of the other as us, as it were, as divine. So it's kind of an interesting ambivalence, but also how many of us can wake up in a given morning and see the other the way that Levinas would want us to see them. It's not easy, right? You need these systems and these policies to remind us, as it were, of Sinai, to remind us of the light. So that's where we went with that. And I was thinking I saw that Elizabeth Langer had this beautiful piece of art on Sefaria with the Aron Kodesh and the holy center, right? And I was thinking a lot about that in terms of God. The Torah is called light, oraita, and we kind of have to put it into an ark, and that's kind of its skin, as it were. It's kind of its masveh. It's kind of has to, and has that parochet. It has that veil in front of it. We can't just look at the Torah, it has to veil it, and at the same time we just can't wait to open. And it's anyway, so that's some of this. We can call on some people, some folks. Maybe I see that Elizabeth's hand's up, or Richard. It's hard to know which whose hand. Maybe we can call on them and then go with some more people. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. One thought about the ritual about taking out the Torah. It's like, what rituals allow us intimacy? What rituals sort of lift the veils or open the doors? Just planting.
Okay, we're on the same wavelength, because I was thinking about the tabernacle as a veil that mediates the intensity of God to us. And that came out in what Rabbi David said too, and my piece in Sefaria. Yeah.
Exactly, right? It's sort of the tikkun, it's the repair of the golden calf. You need a form, we'll give you a form, but not one that eclipses God's presence, but one that mediates and kind of modulates God's presence.
Yes.
Rabbi Dave, I'm going to leave the construction of a lineup or the construction of a sanctuary to you at this moment.
All right, so
build a mishkan.
In my lineup, it's Simon, Marilyn, and then David. So go ahead, Simon. And if you could be brief, Simon, brief.
Do my best, Rabbi. First, I just want to say, long-time listener, first-time caller. Love the Torah here. It's a highlight of my week. So thank you. And I want to just tie in
Simon, can you turn off your video? It might be easier.
Earlier and tie it into the points we're making now. And what I want to tie in is something that Rabbi Shai Held talks about in one of his essays, which is he talks about why is God angry at Israel for being a stiff-necked.
Simon, just 1 second. It's very hard to hear you. You're breaking up. Maybe I'm not the only one. So can you call back in using your phone and call in, and we'll try to find you. In the interim, I'm going to go to Marilyn in Montreal. Marilyn?
Hi, Shabbat Shalom. Usually I'm on Facebook and I'm veiled. Whoops, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, okay, great. So this is like a really interesting experience for me because today I just had the desire to actually be on the Zoom, and I was, the whole time it was stop video. And I decided I needed to raise my hand, which of course now I'm visible. And I was experiencing my own trepidation as I was waiting in line. And then like Rabbi Diane is saying, okay, that's enough for now. And I'm going, no, I was psychologically and emotionally getting ready to unveil and I was actually getting nervous whether my offering was going to be good enough. So why I raised my hand is because I've always like loved that the story about Moses being veiled. And it always brings me back to my brother's bar mitzvah, where I remember my mom coming down from the bima and she was glowing like Moses. And I remember being embarrassed, like that she was too glowing. It was too vulnerable. So I always loved that part. But what called me today was that Moses unveils every time he goes back. I just thought he left his veil on all the time, and for the rest of his life he was always veiled. Ooh. But I'm really attracted by what is happening in when he goes back in, and who is he unveiling for? Does God need Moses to be unveiled, or is there something different for Moses when Moses takes off his veil? And I'm just leaving it as a question, as the unknowing, and that's my offering.
Marilyn, I'm so moved by the image of your mother, and you're telling us about your shame at that moment, your embarrassment of her. And it makes me wonder, like when we unveil, is part of the danger exposure? And what does exposure mean? And why would shame come up for us in those moments?
Well, it's kind of like, it's so much about embarrassment. Embarrass. No, it's true. Embarrassment means that there is a kind of cover and exposure in the sense of being vulnerable. You know, artists are so remarkable this way. I was thinking about Chazan Basia last night, and about her as an artist. You know, she was such an accomplished artist before Romemu. She's still an accomplished artist with Romemu, but like, artists put themselves out. They write a new song, they write a new thing, and they just take a chance, right? And they, in a way, they expose themselves. Whenever a public speaker, this is one of those moments where people, in a way, put themselves out, and there's a dependency and a longing. And when parents, you know, show their true selves, as it were, sometimes for kids, it's a real moment where they can't handle the multiplicity of the expansion of their parental image into another image that might be at odds with it, and it can create dissonance. It's like, oh, wait a second, I see you in this way, I need you to be this way, and now you're acting in a different way. It can be very, very confusing, right? And exposing. Now, will people judge them for it, and so on? There's a lot going on there, and it's very emotional just to hear you talk about that, because last night one of my kids was embarrassed about something I did, and it was so normal, and it was really like, really, do I put the mask back on now because they want me to? You know, these are the, you know, Ilana was bringing us into that place too, and it's very, you and I both know this, Diane, this is good, juicy Torah, juicy Torah, Marilyn. So maybe, I think David Borden was the next person. David, and we're going to go about 5 minutes over, everybody, just so we're going to be kind of, I asked this, you know, the speaker from New York will give us 5 minutes from Tefillah, and we have 5 more minutes. So go ahead, David.
Well, this fits with some of the comments that have been made, but there's some additional. Maybe maybe the Israelites feared that seeing God means becoming aware of what God sees in us, and particularly our imperfections. And we'd become so ashamed that we wouldn't even be able to get out of bed in the morning. And the people who could come to feed us in bed also won't be able to get out of bed. So that's why we'll all die, we'll starve, or things will fall apart. And it's not just the things we're afraid that are wrong with us that we that we'll find out about. It's also things we really inside know that there's something we're doing wrong, and that we're rationalizing with rationalizations that aren't really adequate, and those will be impossible to avoid. And so, like one of my people said before, too much understanding too quickly.
Thank you, David, for that very beautiful share. I wanted to bring Rabbi Kolorestis. This is a text from Thomas Merton, the great Trappist monk, that on the other side of what David just said is that he had this moment on the corner of 4th and Walnut in Louisville that became known as the Epiphany in Louisville, for this great mystic and social activist who wrote in a Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander this remarkable line. You can read it to yourselves, but he had this great line where he had this awakening literally on the corner of 4th and Walnut in Louisville, and he had this liberation from an illusory difference between himself and the others, and he began to laugh out loud. And he wrote, "Then it was as if I suddenly saw the secret beauty of their hearts, the depths of their hearts, where neither sin nor desire nor self-knowledge can reach the core of their identity, the person that each one is in God's eyes. If only they could if they could all see themselves as they really are. If only we could see each other that way all the time, there would be no war and no more hatred, no more cruelty, no more greed. But this cannot be seen, only believed and understood by a peculiar gift," he wrote. And he wrote in another place here that it was the biggest danger would then be that we would all fall down before one another and worship one another. And that would be indeed a danger, he imagined. So kind of the opposite of what you're saying, David, but also in line with that, like this sense of being exposed to how God judges us or how God sees us with all of our imperfections, right? Is that something good, or is it not? It's kind of an interesting way to look at it. I think Simon,
double danger of, as Aluma was saying, like being the brilliant selves that we are, or, feeling like we're too vulnerable and paltry to actually show ourselves, right? And being between those poles.
That's a beautiful ambivalence, right? That's a kind of intention. Should we take Simon? I know was disconnected and now he just made his way back. Simon, do you want to try to offer what you were offering, or? I know, I'm trying to unmute you. There you are.
Thanks. First, I just want to say, first time talker, but long time listener. I really appreciate all the Torah that people put out here. It's a highlight for me. So thank you. I wanted to go on the thread that
Simon is still breaking up for some reason.
That we're on right now. I think there's clearly we've been talking about almost like an
it's frustrating for him, I'm sure. I'm sorry, Simon. So difficult. We're gonna hopefully, that wasn't me, right? It was everybody else was experiencing it as kind of choppy. Okay.
Unfortunately, yes.
It's good to check in on those things. We really don't have much more time, Rabbi Kolorestis. I know there's so many other amazing people that wanted to share. How about we talk about this a little bit more at the open up at 11:15? Maybe people can share about that as well, if they can stay on for that. I'll give about 5 to 10 minutes during the open up at 11:15
Oh, wonderful. This way people will stay for tefillot. 11:15.
All right. Anything else you want to add, Rabbi Kolaressa? It's so good to learn with you and study.
No, it's been a great expanded chavruta. I look forward to talking more Torah later.
Okay, everyone. We're going to transition very gently now into our morning service. We're going to take 2 minutes to do whatever you need to do, a little bio break, and maybe put on some paraphernalia, talit, or whatever way you prepare for tefillah. And we'll be back in about 2 minutes. Yasher kochem.
Yasher koch.
Upon rising, before we get out of bed, may these words be in our hearts and lips. Moda ani lefanecha ruach chai bekayam ruach chai bekayam. שחזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך בחמלה רבה אמונתך מודה אני לפניך רוח חי בקיים רוח חי בקיים שחזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך בחמלה רבה אמונתך אודה אני לפניך רוח חי בקיים רוח חי בקיים שחזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה רבה אמונתך בחמלה רבה אמונתך. And as these words accompany us to waking up, we take this breath of life, Elohai Neshama. Elohai Neshama, Shanatata bi טהורה היא. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא. אתה בראתה, אתה יצרת, אתה נפחת בי, ואתה משמרה בקרבי. You shaped it and you breathed it into me. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא. ואתה תדלית לה ממני ולך חזירה בי, לעתיד לבוא כל זמן שנשמה בקרבי. You shaped it and you breathed it and we return to thee. ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר נשמות לבקרים מאיתים. Blessed be you to those who are flagging of life. We return to thee. And we accompany each other in these days. Blessings.
Please rise if you are able, everyone, feeling your feet on the ground. Wow, wow, brachot, a blessing to be embodied, to be in this body, in this moment. And for consciousness, the very first mark of our awaking from our slumber. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan nas achvi vina lehavchin ben yom uvein laila. You make us conscious beings.
Amen. ברוכת שכינה עלותנו רוח העולם. שסתני בית salmo, you make me in your image.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesani ben chorin. You make me free.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. For the path that is the Jewish path, and for all of us who wrestle with meaning.
Amen. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני בת חורין בן חורין, בני חורין, you make us free.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish harumim. You clothe the naked. You veil us. You give us as many veils as we need, however many we need to shine in the world.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Vokeach Ivrim, for opening my eyes.
Amen. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, זוקפת כפופים. You straighten me when I'm crumpled over.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. You free all the parts of me that are captivated by things other than these blessings.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kifufim. For the integrity and for the power to stand in our truth.
Amen. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, רוקע הארץ, על המים. You spread firmness of earth over waters.
Amen. Baruchat Shechina Latenu Ruach Haolam Hamechina Mitzadei Gaver. You make firm my steps, help me stay on the path.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzarki. For the awareness of the difference between need and want.
Amen. ברוכת שכינה, אלוהינו רוח העולם, עוזרת ישראל בגבורה. You give your people strength.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara. You remind us all that we wear crowns and represent all of your glory here.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoisen layayev koach, for the will to will to will to will, one more breath.
Amen. ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, המעביר שינה מעיניי ותנומה מעפעפיי. You remove the veil of sleep from my eyes, and the slumber, even deeper layers from my eyelids.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed is the source for all of the blessings this morning that we count, that we notice, that we become aware of. Just to stop on one and just say, thank you for that. Thankful for that. For aliveness, for health, for friends, for two guests, the Shabbos singing songs. So beautiful, for all of these blessings this morning on the Shabbat of the refugees, Shabbat of the refugee through HIAS. We also recognize all the different places that we come from and that we are in at this moment, and the blessings of all of the diversity within this community and beyond it, and all that makes for the abode of the Shekhinah, of the Divine One. Let us say together, Amen.
Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo, Bruchahi, Baruch Shema, blessed. All these words that brought this world into being, your words make for becoming. Baruch Shema behaya ha'olam, Baruch Hu. Baruch Shemo Yachid Chei HaOlamim, Melech Meshubach Umfuar Adei Ad Shemo HaGadol. Baruch Ata Adonai, Melech Mehulal Batishbachot.
Amen. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Un Yehalelucha Selah. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha On Yehalelucha Selah. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha On Yehalelucha Selah. Oh, ועד עולם. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Ashrei turns into hallelujah, brimming with praise. Hallelujah, 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 el bekocho, hallelujah, bekia uzo, hallelujah, big bugotav, hallelujah, kerov gudlo, kol haneshama te hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama te hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Beteka shofar, hallelujah, benevel bechinor, hallelujah, betofu machol, hallelujah, beminim ve'ugav, kol haneshama te hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, kol haneshama te hallelujah, 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 betzitzilei shama, hallelujah, betzitzilei truah, kol haneshama te hallelujah, kol haneshama te hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama te hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama te hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
I love that hallelujah. Rabbi Rivera, I love that hallelujah. It's so like, so beautiful. I love the energy of hallelujah with the hallelujah of breath and the hallelujah of instruments. And ultimately that is what the psalmist is saying, that each of us is an instrument, as it were. And we have different sounds and different moments. And on Shabbat, it's as if all of those different ways that the breath of our life is shaped comes to the fore. So Nishmat Kol Chai, the breath of all life in all of the different ways. We say Ruach Kol Basar Tifair, Uti Romem Zichrecha Malkeinu Tamid. What if all of life were just singing in some way in its unique moment and unique valence, the love of that moment? Ay, 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 hey, na, na, oh, oh, oh. Ay, 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 Nishmas kol chai, tivarech es shimecho, Hashem, Hashem, Elohim, Shmas kol chai, tivarech es shimecho, Adonai, Elohim, Nai, 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 ay, 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 hey, nai, nai, oh, oh, hey, nai, nai, oh, nai, 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 no, no, hey, nai, nai, oh, yeah, yeah, hey, nai, nai, oh, oh, hey, nai, 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 Enanai, Mit Melach, Umi Ishvelach, האל הגדול הגיבוי הנורא אל עליון קונה שמיים והארץ נעללך ונשבחך ונפארך ונברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני בכל קרובי את שם קודשו האוהל בתעצומות עוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך המלך היושב על כיסא רם וניצב שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו דיינai, 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 שוכן על מרום וקדוש שמו שוכן על מרום וקדוש שמו
ישרים, תתרומם, תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים, תתהלל, תתהלל, שוכן עד מרום, וקדוש שמו, שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו.
ובדברי צדיקות תתברך, תתברך, ובלשון חסידות תתקדש, תתקדש, שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו, שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו.
ובמקהלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל יראה בשמך מכנו שכן חובת כל יצורים לפניך אלוהינו ולאורנו להודות הלב לשבח לפאר ולברך לעלי ולקלס על כל דברי שירוס ותשבחוס דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך שוכנן מרום וקדוש שמו שוכנן מרום וקדוש וקדוש שמו. Please rise if you are able as we conclude Psukei de Zimra, the singing frequency of joy and radical amazement. Yishtabach Shimecha La'ad Malkeinu El HaMelech HaGadol VaKadosh B'Shamayim U'Ba'aretz. Hallel Zimra Ozu Mem Shalom Netzach Gidula U'Yivrat Ilah V'Tiferet Kedusha U'Malachut Berachot Ve'Hodaos Me'ata V'Yad Olam. Blessings and thanksgivings and blessings, gratitude and expressions of wow, it's so great to be alive. Baruch Ata Adonai El Melech Olam Tishbachos El HaHodaos Adon HaNiflaos Ribon Kol HaMasim Borei Kol HaNeshamos Haboche B'Shirei Zimra Melech Elchei העולמים חצי קדיש יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבם וילמד יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ויום איכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן.
יהי שמי רבא מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה.
ריחום
לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו
Amen. Good Shabbos, Rabbi Revira.
Good Shabbos, Rav David. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Beautiful, beautiful family and community.
Mamash. So this
Mamash.
beautiful family community on a Shabbat that we know we were participating in the National HIAS Refugee Shabbat, a Shabbat that a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, was the Shabbat before what befell the Eitz Chaim Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, when that horrific moment of hate, right, was, as it were, hung on this notion of being welcoming to the stranger, being welcoming to those who seek refuge, those who seek political asylum. And here we are, Baruch Hashem, on another Shabbos morning, and continuing to do it, and we'll continue to do it as a community and as a people and as a country. We continue to walk out the Torah's talk of Ki Gerim Hayitem. We too were once Gerim, once strangers in a strange land. And so on this Shabbat, we'd like to invite people to go into these breakout rooms, a couple of you just to say hello, and we'd just like to invite you during the 3 minutes that you're together to introduce yourselves, maybe where you're kind of check in, how you doing, and then if you could to invoke either where you're from, as it were, like I'm from Tarnov, at least my family is from Tarnov, Poland, and also Germany. And if not where you're from, where your ancestors that you'd like to invoke with you this morning and bring with you into our service, where they might be today. So we're going to take that moment right now and see you in about 3 or 4 minutes, everybody. Good Shabbos, friends. Good Shabbos. If there's anybody here for the first time, I would like to invite you to stand up and to introduce yourself so we might see you if you're here for the first time. And you could just actually raise your hand. You don't even have to write it into the chat area. We're just going to unmute you and invite you to say hello and introduce yourself if you feel so called. Raising your hand can be found in your reaction toolbar in here, just to raise your hand, and we'd love to see any raised hands. Anybody here for the first time, love to say hello. If you'd like to also chat your hello, that's also cool. All the options available here in Zoom universe, in the Zoomiverse. Anybody? Love to see you. We really wanna. Let's see, first timers. Please go ahead. You are first time here. Let's see. Nancy, go ahead. It's ever changing here this week.
Mom, you're muted.
Well,
Oh, that gave it away.
You gave away our punchline. We're Nancy Sable and Don Pearlstein, your rabbinic intern, Ben Pearlstein's parents. And we've been on Facebook, but this is our first time on Zoom in the room with you.
Zoom in the room with us. And so our hearts are with you also, Nancy, also after a very tumultuous and heights and depths weeks, last week or so. And so we're thinking about you, to be able to be present for us, with us, and with your son after a week in which he wowed us with his brilliance and his shine, and also holding him together with you and your family and the loss of your brother. And our hearts are with you on Shabbat as well. So welcome. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Nancy's family, by the way, is from Prusnitz.
From Prusnitz, okay.
Which has a Romemu connection we discovered last night.
Jeff is from there, it seemed like.
That's where Jeff Kahn's, that's Jeff Kahn's family, exactly.
And
one part of it, exactly, one part of it, for sure.
Yes.
Well, welcome.
And the shall we call it the religious side of our family was from Sosnovitz.
Okay. Ben, did you get that?
Ben has been there. He can tell you many stories.
Okay. I want to hear at least one of them, Ben. Okay, at least one story. We welcome you, and we welcome also Lanthier. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but please.
I'm Lanthier. I live in Richmond, Virginia. I've been watching the services on YouTube for the past couple of weeks, but this is my first time on Zoom. It's been lovely. Thank y'all.
Y'all, lovely to have you say y'all. Welcome, Lanthier from you said from Virginia.
Yeah, Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond, Virginia, welcome. Great to have you. Thank you for being with us this morning. And let's see, Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff.
That's Rabbi Jeff Hoffman. Okay.
Hi, yes, I'm a teacher at the Academy for Jewish Religion and gotten to know Reb David through his teaching there and visiting Romemu. I actually am I wouldn't say a refugee, but an immigrant in a way. I just moved a week ago from White Plains, New York to Frederick, Maryland, where I'm living now. We moved here because our daughter and her family is here. She's actually a cantor at a conservative synagogue. Her husband's a rabbi. And I'm going to kind of toggle between their service and this service because I love them both. And I was able to move because Reb David knows for many years I was on the administration at the Academy for Jewish Religion. I helped them get accredited just about a half year ago, and I've left the administration. I'm just teaching and writing, doing things I love, and very happy to zoom in.
Rabbi Jeff, so great to have you here. Thank you for being with us and for sharing a little bit of your world with us. Welcome as you toggle with one tuchus to two weddings, as it were. We're going to turn to, I think, Nancy. Nancy Dallett had her hand up, even though it's not your first time. Someone else might be here as a guest. Nancy?
Yes, I have been here before, of course, but my mother is here for the first time. I'm visiting with her in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. And in the empty chair, she's gone away, but she'll be back, is Connie here from Liberia.
Wonderful. Wow, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Bruchim ha'ba'im. Blessings to you. Let's see, one more person has their hand up, and then we'll enter into the Baruch Hu together. I think it's Jay. Go ahead, brother.
Greetings from Toronto. This is not my first time, maybe my third, so I think it's a chazaka, but I suspected that I've known Ben as an infant, and Nancy and Donnie's appearance have confirmed that. So Shabbat Shalom. I haven't seen you guys in a long time, and love you, and my thoughts are with you.
Well, thank you for extending that as
It's been a while, Jay. It's great to see you.
Ben, do you know him?
I knew it was you. I remember it was a long time ago.
Amazing. I invite you, if you're able to stand, everyone, please rise for the Baruch Hu as we call out in recognition of the divine in each and every human being, in recognition of the call to community as we intended, which is to each and every human being imbued with divine dignity and infinity, irrespective of geographic boundaries and the ways that we love and the ways that we gender and the ways that we, you name all of the different ways that God has brought forth in this world. She loves each and every one of us with that profound dignity that we deserve. And so we call upon that within each and every one of us that is holy, that is sacred, that is irreducible. To the Baruch Hu, oh Baruch Hu, yes Adonai, we rise, Hamivorach. Baruch Adonai Hamivorach Leolam Vaed. You may be seated, everyone, as we bless the light and the dark. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotze or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Kol yoducha v'kol yishabechucha v'kol yomru ein kadosh k'Adonai.
Kadosh, Kadosh, Adonai Tzevaot, Melech kol haaretz kevodo. Baruch kevod Adonai Mimkomo. Or Chadash, renewed light upon our people. Al Tzion Ta'ir, v'nizkechu lanu, mehera leoro. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot.
Amen.
Amen, amen. The Zohar teaches that when Moses was coming down the mountain with those first tablets and saw the golden calf, he dropped the tablets not only because he was angry, but because the letters actually flew away when they saw the golden calf. And they had been giving these tablets the levity that was allowing Moses to hold them. And when they flew away, the tablets became quite heavy. So as we move into Ahava Rabbah and Shema, reconnecting with our liturgical letter love system, just inviting everybody to feel the levity of letting these letters, all these words just rest on our hearts, be engraved in us and hold us up with great love. Ahava Rabbah Avtanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemla Gedolei Teirach Amat Aleinu V'Ina Malkeinu V'Avor Hareneinu V'Tortecha. Give the light and lightness to our eyes in Torah. All this wisdom swirling, giving oneness and wholeness to our hearts. If they're broken, helping them to connect to oneness. כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו נגיע ונשמחה בישועתך. והביאנו לשלום. It's okay. You don't have to gather. All of you will be gathered from all the four corners of the earth. V'tolichenu kumemiut le'artzeinu. Just rest in love. Ki el poel yishot ata'avan v'charta mikol ha'am v'lashon. וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלה באמת להודות לך לכתך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר עמו ישראל באהבה. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. Make sure to love your God and the highest ideals and not idols. V'chol levavecha uv'chol nafshecha v'chol miodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam leot. Connect these letters. Let them be little reminders for you. Al yadcha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'hisharecha v'haya. Just listen. Give yourself a rest from all the idolatries. Close your eyes. Close your eyes and allow the truth to settle in. The true, true, truth. El mitzvotai. Pen yifte, face the temptations of your heart and don't worship them. Don't be lost. Quick, just let these letters rest on your heart, be engraved and come alive, and teach them and write them. You should have heavenly days on this earth, just shuttling between heaven and earth all the days of your life. From idols to ideals, you can remember Ani Adonai Elohechem Emet.
ויציב ונכון וקיים, וישר ונאמן וכוכבי ונחמד, ונעים ונורא וידיר ומתוקן, ומקובל וטוב ידבר הדבר הזה עלינו ללמד אמת אלוהי עולם. From the beginning till the end, freedom, redemption, liberation, charut al luchos, the freedom of the letters, they can never be destroyed. that which can never be destroyed. You can kill the revolutionary, you can kill the visionary, but you can't kill the vision. You can't kill the revolution. You can try to take away freedom, but freedom will not die. It is the truth, beginning, middle, and end. So Tehilos Le'el Elyon, Baruch Hu Mevorach, Moshe u'Miriam u'Bnei Yisrael lechanu shira, Besimcha rabah, Ve'ameru chulam. Hup, hup, hup. Elik Madonai, mi kamocha nedar bakodesh, Torah tehilot, ozim, denindanai, andai, andai, ay, dai, 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 ambai, ambai, ay, dai, 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 ambai, ambai, ay, dai, 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 dum, dai, dai, ah, 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 ah. Ah, 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 na, 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 na. Ay, dai, 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 yamba, yamba, yai, yai. Ay, dai, 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 yamba, yamba, dai. Yai, yai, yamba, yini, dai, dai. Dai, dai, yamba, yini, dai. Tur Yisrael, Kuma b'ezat Yisrael, rise if you're able. Kuma b'Yisrael, go aleinu Adonai tzvot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, ay nay nay nay, yamba yindi nay nay, ay nay nay nay, yamba yindi nay, ay nay nay nay, nay nay. Adonai, go we begin Amidah together, everyone, as we invoke our ancestors, our mothers and fathers, the patriarchs and matriarchs, and all who came before, as we make our way to Kedusha.
Adonai, sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tilatecha. May our lips carry these praises with integrity and openness. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloi avoteinu v'imotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Vekonei Hakol Vezocher Chastei Avot Ve'imahot Umevi Goel Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo V'yava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים, אתה רב והושיע. מוריד הטל, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. סומק נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גיבורות ומי דומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה מצמיח ישועה בנאמנת לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו נשמי מרום, כך עשו על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כבודו, מזבח קדוש גדול נגן וחזק משמיעים כל מתנסים לעומת שרפים לעומת סם ברוך יומנו. דרנאי 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 Baruch Yevon Adonai ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, ושים לך לנקימך כי אנחנו לך, מסעי תמנוח בציון, בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון.
תסגדל ותסגדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, הידי לדור ודור ולנצח ולנצח נצחים. אי ואיננו תרנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך. I am nai 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 da dai di dam di dai 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 da di ayo ay 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 dai da dai dai da dai dai da ya ya oh al yadei David Mashiach tzidkecha. Adonai yimloch Adonai leolam, Elohayich Tzion ledor vador. Hallelujah.
לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. בשבחך אלוהינו מפינו לימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We invite you to take a few minutes to prepare the heart, to receive Torah this morning, the gift of Moshe Rabbeinu. Bring your children into the space wherever they are. Bring them under the talit. We want all of our children to grow up in a big talit Judaism. Everybody can get under the God's talit. יברכך אדוני וישמרך אדוני פניו אליך ויחונקה יישא אדוני פניו אליך ויעשה לך שלום, שלום, יעשה לך שלום, 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 שלום. Shalom, shalom, shalom. V'yasem lecha shalom. May there be peace. May there be peace for all of the children. And let us say Amen. Kaddish Shalem, our Aramaic pause on this morning's yearning as we turn to learn. Yitkadal.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, מעלמא דברך ירתי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו.
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעלם ומעלמיה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה. לעילה מן כל ברכתה בשירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמרן בעלמא ואמרו.
אמן. כי תקבל צלותון ובאותון לכל בית ישראל קדם אבו דבשמיא ואמרו.
אמן.
יהי שלום רבה משמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו.
אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו ברחמיו יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, and let us say amen. אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. הרחמים היטיבה ברצונך את ציון. We are opening up to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening up into the luminous love light of the one. תבנך חומוס ירושלים, תבנך חומוס ירושלים, כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך אל רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. ויהי בנשוא אהרון, ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני ויפוצו אויביך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך, כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר אדוני, מירושלים ברוך שנשן תורה תורה, ברוך שנשן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. בשמי דבר עלמא בכיסרא ויסרא ירושלים. וענר החץ ולשמי קדישה, קדישה יקירם, אנא אמר תושבחן. בענר החץ, בענר החץ ולשמי קדישה, קדישה יקירם, אנא אמר תושבחן. יהי רבה כאדמך, יפתח ליבאי באורייסה, וששתי משלנדי ליבאי, ולליבה לכל עמך ישראל, לטוב ולחיים ולשלום. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadelu l'Adonai iti, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו, לך אדוני הגדולה, והגבורה והתפארת והנצח והעוד, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה, והמתנשא לכל ראש.
Romemu,
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 Romemu.
Adonai Eloheinu, ve'ishtachavu, ve'ishtachavu, lehadom raglav kadoshu. Romemu,
Romemu,
Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, ve'ishtachavu, ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Ay 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 dee da da ay bam ba dee da 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 dee da da ay 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 dam dee da da ay 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 dam dee da do pam.
Yum bam 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 bam. You may be seated, everyone, if you're not already seated, as we open up for the first Aliyah, this morning's reading. So for those of you who are with us this morning at the open book, we had some unfinished reading, as it were. We had some people who still were waiting to speak. And let me just give some context for those who are going to speak a little bit at this moment, and then we'll come in for our open up in particular this morning, the laning for this morning. This morning's reading, Parshat Kitisa, is basically known as the Parsha of the Golden Calf. We're dealing with the Golden Calf, and we are in the center between four other Parshiot. We're at the kind of the middle point between tabernacle behind us, tabernacle in front of us, and we're in the middle. The Golden Calf is sandwiched between tabernacle in front and in back. It is the chiastic structure of A, B, C, B, A. It is the C, and literally the thing in the middle, the golden calf. And what we discussed this morning in our Parsha study was about the end of this morning's reading, not the golden calf episode, but another episode of light and gold, and that is the face of Moshe, that when Moses came down from the mountain after receiving the second set of tablets, his face was shining. And we talked about it last night a little bit about the mistranslation of Saint Jerome, the anti-Semitic translation of Saint Jerome, that saw the shining face of Moshe as the horns, as it were. The horns, the word for shining, karan, in most places in the Torah means horn, but in this particular place could not have meant that. And he unfortunately translated it that way. That became, of course, immortalized in Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel and the demonic overlay of that. But we talked about the covering of the Moshe face, meaning that Moshe was covered with he covered his own face with a masveh, with a mask, because his face was so illuminated, it was shining so brightly that it was impossible for people to engage with him. And we talked this morning about the ambivalence in the text between divine intimacy or face to face, whether it be the face of the other, as in Moshe, that was so illuminate that it was impossible to be in relationship with him, or it was the face of God, that it was that there's a desire to see God's face. I really want to know you. I really want to know you. I really want to see you. And God saying, no, you can't see me, right? You can only see the back of my head. And we spent almost an hour on that very profound and powerful image of sometimes needing a cover in order for there to be intimacy, that we need covers. sometimes those covers that are protective become a place that of idol worship or fetishizing the cover as opposed to that which is behind it. We talked about all of that, believe it or not, in an hour, and there were still some really beautiful things that still needed to be heard. I invited those who were waiting in the queue to stick around and maybe get a chance to share their thoughts, and then we'll make our way towards this morning's reading of Torah, which is a little bit different. So Jill, and then Roberta and Kathy Lynn. And we're going to take all in about until about 11:20, like a little 11:28 or so on this. Go ahead, Jill.
Okay, I'll be brief. I just wanted to, the comment that I was going to make was that in my experiences, when, I've really wanted something and maybe I prayed for it and then I gave it up. I just decided whatever God wants is what, and I had no kind of attachment to it. And then it happened. And so when it's happened, I felt very, very small, very, very humble, to even think that, that out of all the prayers that are out here, that this one might, even have a chance to be answered. And so I felt that kind of humility with the, both the, the radiance that was coming from Moshe's face, that the people were just, it would, just felt so small to be even let in on that. And then also the humility that Moses showed by putting a veil there, and just that whole relationship between Moses and his people kind of reminds me of a lot of what I've seen in the deaf community, how things are done communally, that often when there are doctor's appointments or political thing, whatever it is, there's long discussions about it and not one person makes that decision, and people, are doing it together. So I feel like there was some humility, the people saying, we're not ready for this. And they were okay with sending Moses, up the mountain. And because of that, all of us saw what God said and heard what God wrote. So
I love it.
Those are the comments I wanted to share.
Thank you, Jill. I'm going to lift up that, lifting up this other side of the veil, which is that the humility to say this is too much, or this is not, this isn't where I am, or that I need, the veil is necessary. You go, right? There's a quality here of humility that invokes support and a kind of vulnerability that you're lifting up, Jill, a vulnerability that then becomes communally lifted, that it's not on me alone, or that I have to let go of my, let's say, hubris, that I have to be able to handle this, or I have to be able to do this, or I, and that then leaves room for the veil here is someone else to help support it, someone else to go on our behalf, someone else. There's a lot of that. That frame that you just brought was very beautiful. Not my will, but thy will be done, or our will be done. It doesn't have to be mine. It's as long as it gets done, as it were. It's kind of a very beautiful communal piece that you just brought to that, which wasn't lifted up actually earlier. That's a very beautiful way of thinking about it. Thank you so much for that. Roberta, and then Kathy Lynn.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to just bring in something that I didn't hear covered in our amazing discussion earlier. That, what does it take for us to encounter a person in power, a person who has incredible power over us without veils? And I started to think about the Shabbat of immigration and immigrants, and all the coding that goes on everywhere, and that it's not safe. We don't live in a world where it is safe, right? For most of us to encounter people in power without veils. And it just brought me to an experience I had in the West Bank in a group where a young Palestinian man said to me, and the very mixed group we were in, he said, I don't know if it's safe for me to feel compassion toward the Israelis. So let's not, in our spiritual, in seeing the spiritual beauty of this, which is usually what I focus on, let's look at the very real, what it means when you come down from the mountain and you step back into your position of power. So that's really up for me very much today.
It's so powerful. I mean, I think that, thank you for bringing that. I was thinking in our community's immigration panel that took place a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, we had one of the panelists, it was named Eddie Chavez Calderon, and he spoke about the experience he had as an immigrant and with his mother making the long and dangerous trek. It was, the story he told was so moving. If people have a chance to go back and listen to it, it was such a powerful story, and how he didn't see his mother cry until they got to the end of the journey, and she was treated with humanity. There was a moment where one of those who was in a position of power treated her with humanity, and it brought her to tears. And he shared that, and I was crying, and it was very moving just to think of, just very moving to think about how guarded, how protected she needed to be, and how, of course, it made sense. And in this context, right, that often, as you just brought out, when your only exposure to someone with power is power over and dangerous and threatening, right? How badly we need that masveh. And in our conversation this morning about ambivalence, about divine intimacy, our intimacy here, there's really, we're talking about the consuming fire of God, right? There is the consuming fear of the one who is dangerous, the one who doesn't wield power skillfully, and how each moment has that need to be protected. And I think I was talking about that last night with the horns. Like, we Jews know a thing or two over the last 2,000 years of what it was to be powerless, and then how dangerous it is for all of us when we move from positions of powerlessness to positions of power. How do we wield that, and how we one small translation and mistranslation can then set off both mistranslations and also true, and how crazy making that could be. I mean, imagine Eddie Chavez's Calderon's mother, like not knowing friend, foe, and being on that knife's edge, right? And it's really terrifying in so many ways. So thank you for bringing that up. It's a very powerful frame to think about. I mean, and I think in many ways that is this parsha, and the story of the Jewish focus on immigration is a story of how the fear of the Torah that we'll forget that we were once there too, right? The Torah has to say it 36 times because it knows. I mean, this is, it's not a radical thing to say at all. This is exactly, Micha Goodman, rather, in Israel, the philosopher in Israel, talks about how the book of Deuteronomy is decidedly agnostic about whether or not it's a good thing for Jews in the book itself to have sovereignty. Like, having a king is really scary. Like, what do you do? Like, how do you remember now that you have power to be, right, to act unto others as you would have wanted them to act to you, which is kind of like the undercurrent of Jewish ethical sensibility in the Bible that we have as an aspiration, an unfinished story that we have to continue to finish. So thank you for that. We're going to take, there was one more hand up, and then Kathy Lynn, I think your hand was up, and then we're going to turn to this morning's Kriyat Torah. Kathy Lynn, go ahead. Uh-oh, there you go.
Okay.
Great.
In the open book, people were taught, can you hear me? In the open book, people, Alana and some others talked about parenting, and I was thinking about that because, when Solly, my boy, was 2, the way I spoke to him about his father was very different. It was mitigated, it was veiled compared to the way I spoke to him about his father when he was 8, compared to the way I speak to him about his father when he's 22. And, in terms of, the face, not Moshe not being able to see God's face. It's because there's what is the ability of the other person to receive? Where is their consciousness at? And where can you actually create rapport? You know, because when you create rapport, you build a bridge to the other, they can then receive it, and they can actually have their consciousness raised, or they can build more, you can build more intimacy. I hope I'm making sense. I'm trying to articulate this. So, you know, if the idea is that God didn't show the face of God, even though the face of God is everywhere in creation, it would possibly have been to create more rapport, to build a bridge to the people where they would be able to receive more, and their consciousness would ultimately be raised, and they would be able to connect more with the divine and one another. And it's the same like with different friends. You know, you sit with one friend and you can immediately, if something's going on, you can immediately begin to weep, you know. And with another friend, it's almost like, even though you love them just as much, it's like it's Teflon and it's bouncing off and there's not an ability. It's like you have to build a bridge of rapport to raise the consciousness. You have to connect first with where that person is at.
Thank you, Kathy
I was
Lynn.
thinking.
Thank you, Kathy Lynn. So the real question to Kathy Lynn, and I think that Rabbi Koresis was also trying to bring out this morning, was about titration, about the question of interpersonal, intersubjective titration. Like, you know, being in attuning to someone is also knowing, right, the dancing of listening and the dancing of speaking and listening and revealing, concealing, like all of it is so fundamental to social, you know, to being socially lubricated, like being not running into each other and bumping into each other, and also creating more positively rapport. A rapport is a kind of the sum total of the things that we do verbally, non-verbally, energetically, that allow for there to be a deep meeting of humanity, which is a listening and a sharing, right? That is, you know, we spoke about parents and children. That's such a fundamental dyadic or familial system, right? And so, as we make our turn from listening to each and every one of you who had something beautiful to offer, and thank you to all of you who offered from this morning. For those of you who were not with us for the open book, man, you missed a good one. I'm kidding. It was amazing, but it's recorded, and you can always go back. And next week, come for the open book. It was beautiful, and in the reading this morning for the Torah, is slightly different. It actually brings us to the beginning of the golden calf story, not at the end of the parsha, where we were this morning with Moses's remarkably illuminate face, but to the moment where the people did not see Moshe's face, and that led to that absence of that facial connection, the absence of relationship led to the breach and to the breaking down of a certain sense of presence. So that's where we're going to start in a moment with the actual Kriyat Torah. But for this this morning's open up, I want to call to the Torah something related to the building of the Egel HaZahav, the building of the golden calf. And what I'd love to offer this morning, for those of you for whom this is meaningful, is just to take a step back and to recognize that that in some ways there are so many questions about the golden calf story that it's impossible to address all of them all at once. You know, why didn't Moshe intervene earlier? Why didn't God intervene earlier? What was it? What, you know, how could it be that the people were so connected and then fell so precipitously? What is Aaron's role in all of this? Like, you know, why is Aaron involved in this way? Didn't Aaron, you know, this Aaron figure is so tragic. You know, he's the older brother of Moshe, but he's also here complicit in helping the people. Why is, you know, is he helping them? Is he hindering them? Should he, you know, was it a failed leadership moment? There are so many things, and a lot of it hinges, of course, on this business of Moshe being absent. Ki boshesh Moshe laredet. Moshe, he was late. The people didn't know what happened to him. Mehayalo. What happened to Moshe? And there is something there that we touch on every year, right? This kind of attachment theory and object constancy, and where's Moses' leadership, especially when you needed him most. But I want to focus on Aaron for a moment and raise up something that I saw in the name of Rabbi Dov Liria, and then he quoted like a lot of other people, and it really speaks to me, which is the role that we have in nipping a big lie in the bud before it takes on a life of its own. That one of the hallmarks of great leadership here at this moment in our national conversations and in other conversations, a moment that maybe Aaron missed, said Dov Liria, meaning maybe Aaron was so focused on taking care of the people, he allowed there to be a small lie in the beginning, right? Not knowing whether Moses would come down, or maybe allowing them to place, to take off their earrings and to fashion this golden calf because he thought, oh, their intentions are good. They're going to wind up, what's the big deal? They're going to wind up, they need a leader after all, and Moshe's late. He points out all these moments where potentially Aaron's motivations were good intentions, good motivations, but that ultimately he allowed himself to be taken in by this assumption that a small lie in the beginning would remain, as it were, a small misalignment, and that it wouldn't get out of control. And that ultimately what happened was that this small thing snowballed, and that it became so big that before he knew it, it was, as he said later on, like, I just threw it into the fire and then, it turned out into this calf, the ultimate abdication of leadership, right? I just threw it into the fire and there it was. But in many ways, says Dov Liria, he's actually describing an experience, which is the maybe good intention, the maybe not a bad motivation in the beginning to take care of the people at the expense of the absolute truth. But that ultimately that compromise came back to bite him, as it were. That a willingness in the beginning to not look directly at something that was untrue led ultimately to this apotheosis of, of what the Torah wants, which is mistaking the part for the whole, this willingness to look at the golden calf or the greed or whatever it is that has now ballooned and become an ugly expression of and a distortion of reality. Right? That in some way, Dov Liria was saying, and I heard this yesterday when I read his Torah, that great leadership, it speaks up in the minute a falsehood has been thrown out. That the minute something is a deviation from what is accurate and what is true, we have a willingness and a courage and a strength, which is really not easy, to speak it out, to speak it truthfully, even if it means that the mob will not be happy. And even if it means that the mob might say, how could you say that, right? How could you say that? And I think that there's something about truth-telling here this morning, especially as we make our turn from where we have been for the last 4 years in these, first few months of return to sanity in many ways, that we have to be willing at this moment to speak the truth as early as possible, right? To not look away, to not give it, not give it any air, right? We have to speak truth in that way. So I wanted to lift up that moment. There are a lot of other moments, and this one might not be the one for you, but if it is, and our first reader will intone this blessing, I invite you to, in your heart, as it were, either literally stand or in your heart, stand with Torah this morning as we invoke the power to stand up and speak the truth, even if we think that, even if it might cost us something on some level to speak it. So that's the Ya'amod for the first Aliyah, for this open up.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu im kol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayiten el Moshe kechalto ledaber ito behar Sinai. Shnei luchot ha'edut, luchot even ketuvim be'etzba Elohim, vayar ha'am כי בושש משה לרדת מן ההר, ויקהל העם על ההרון, ויאמרו אליו, קום, עשה לנו אלוהים, אשר ילכו לפנינו, כי זה משה האיש, אשר העלנו מארץ מצרים, לא ידענו מהיה לו. ויאמר עליהם אהרון, פרקו נזמי הזהב, אשר באוזני נשיכם, בניכם ובנותיכם, והביאו אליי, ויתפרקו כל העם את נזמי הזהב אשר באוזניהם, ויביאו אל אהרון, ויקח מידם, ויצר אותו בחרת, ויעשהו עגל מסכה, ויאמרו אלה אלוהיך ישראל, אשר העלוך מארץ מצרים. וירא אהרון, ויבן מזבח לפניו, ויקרא אהרון ויאמר, חג לאדוני מחר, וישכימו ממחרת, ויעלו עולות, ויגישו שלמים, וישב העם לאכול ושתו, ויקומו לצחק. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Misha Berach Avotenu V'Imotenu, may the one who blessed our ancestors bless all of you this morning who came up this morning to honor Shabbat, to honor Torah, to honor the Holy One, a blessing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. May the Holy One bless you. What a beautiful laning and a beautiful piece of Torah. Oh, this is a piece of the Torah where the rabbis teach us that God gave a present to Moshe called Torah, and it was like a betrothal blessing. Torah was given, as it were, as a kind of wedding present, and then they see the golden calf as a moment of deep disloyalty, a moment of betrayal, a betrayal of that unit of experience, a betrayal of that relationship. And Aaron's role in this is complicated. Maybe he wanted to help the people. Maybe he wanted to figure out a way that within their desires there was something holy, something good that might be nourished, and in some way he would steer them, right? We'll just let him. He's not going to govern this way. He's not going to be this way. This is just, this is just on the surface, but underneath it, there's a holy, something good will come of it. And so taking Aaron, as it were, to task today, but also learning from it, because that's in the Torah for us to learn from, is a way of saying that sometimes the compromises that we make in our willingness to say and see the truth and speak it and surface it can ultimately lead to an Eile Elohecha Yisrael moment, where in the final result, the people of Vayomru, they said, here, Eile Elohecha, this is your God, Israel. And that, of course, is somewhat tragic, right? So I wanted to call forward that in myself and in all of us here this morning, is that when you see something, say something. If you see it, say it, and lift it up. And in that way, we can also steer clear of some of the pitfalls of building an absolute that isn't absolute, that isn't truthful, that it doesn't really honor the totality of the picture. For this Torah and for all of the other Torah that are in these words, may their lights be a vessel for all of us, and let us all say Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Tamadu, Tamadu, Nechama Esther bat Moshe Leib, Veshulamit and Sander ben Simcha Aryeh Edith. Shani, Nancy, and Don, please come forward for this blessing over the second Aliyah.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamabarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Im Kol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lekbred ki sheched amcha asher ha'elata me'eretz Mitzrayim saru maher min haderek asher tzivitim Asu lahem egel masacha, vayishtachavu lo, vayispechu lo, vayomeru, Ele Elohecha Yisrael, asher ha'elucha me'eretz Mitzrayim. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, Ra'iti et ha'am hazeh, V'hinei am kishehu rafhu. Ve'ata hani chali v'yiharapi bahem v'achalem ve'aseh odcha legoy gadol. V'yihar Moshe et penei Adonai Elohav Vayomer Lama Adonai Yeharepecha Be'amecha Asher Hotzeta Me'eretz Mitzrayim Bekoach Gadol Uvyad Hazakah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen. Mishaberach Avotenu v'imotenu hu yivarech es Nechama Esther bas Moshe Leib v'Shulamit v'Sander ben Simcha Aryeh v'Edith ba'avosh alu l'chvar hamakom l'chvar ha'torach v'hod ha'Shabbat b'tzchar zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishmer me'atzilim b'kol tzar v'tukam mikol nega u'machala v'shlach bracha v'atzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yedeihem. May the source of life bless the two of you this morning. I feel like Don and Nancy, giving you a blessing in the presence of your son is also like a bit strange, because the truth is that I want to bless you, of course, with nachas from Ben, and your children, but that's already obvious. Every time you come on, you watch Ben; he's shining. And then bless the two of you with maybe Ben knows what you need to be blessed with. So Ben, why don't you bless your parents?
I do want to lift up this this Torah that's been with us this morning that Rabbi Ingber you've offered before, but it came up again this morning that panim el panim connotes this 360-degree gematria, full circle imagery, face to face. As you know, we're grieving my Uncle Stuart. We're wishing so badly that we could be face to face, not only with him, but with so many, all of our loved ones and all of you. And I'm really sitting with this strange reality that in our parsha we're talking about an egel, a calf, which is like the same. It's also means circle, egel, agul. It's almost like the opposite circle of the face-to-face circle. And even the people are dancing machol. They're doing circle dances with this golden calf. And we have certainly had a couple of weeks where we're living with the full circle, a whole life cycle. Mom, as you said earlier in the week, just the heights and depths that really do ultimately make up the full circle of life. And I'm this morning I want to bless you and us and this community with the ability to hold that complexity and to feel supported and loved in the richness and fullness and fragmentation, and just being able to know that in brokenness, we can all still be one big circle with everybody in it. And know that it's not idolatrous to be able to hold really contradictory things, to be able to know that even in a sad time there's joy, and even amidst joy there's potential for ruinous loss. And thank you.
Too, bless you also, Ben, and Nancy and Don. I've known Ben for a while now, and I've had a chance to be like a witness to his own growth, his time in Romemu and his time in New York and his time at rabbinical school. And one of the things that I look for in young leaders is kind of an emotional maturity and ability to be with people in various extremes, and also to be okay with that, and to be able to sit with it and to hold it and to stay in the room. And something that Ben just blessed you with is something that I think that Ben has received from you, is the ability to be very open-hearted and to be with joy, and also to be with people in very intense places. And so I just want to bless your whole family with, as you said, Ben, with the ability to hold this full circle, and especially the shlemut that comes from shalom, from your brother. And his legacy. When Ben spoke about him to the community of clergy, he spoke about how he walked, he marched to the beat of his own drum. He was like a little bit of everything. He was a whole universe. He said he could hold opposites, and he was just this completely unique Torah. That's what he was. So I want to bless you, the two of you, with continuing to sit side by side under one talit as you are now, loving each other. And let us all say Amen.
Amen.
I feel like I need to hear their voices again. Just 1 second. Don and Nancy, just go ahead. Just take a second here. Felt like we just
Rabbi.
blessing, and then we close it off.
It's really beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. And we've really appreciated the support that we have felt from all of you. Thank you.
Mamash.
It's our honor to be with you this morning.
I'll tell you something. Every time Ben's with us, you're with us too. It just, as soon as you open your mouth, I could feel like Ben is channeling you guys. So, Baruch Hashem, thank you so much for such beauty. And we moved to our third Aliyah this morning. And our dear neighbor who just moved up, who just made an Aliyah to this area of the woods, Tamedi Kroina Bat Leah Uvinyamin Kim Shnayim, for the third and final Aliyah Shlishit.
Baruch Adonai Hamvara.
Adonai Mivorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvara Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bahar Banu Mikol. Wait, Asher Bahar Banu. Where that? Why am I getting lost here?
You can choose on the menu, im or mi.
Oh, im. Okay. Im kol chamim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen. Lama Yomru Mitzrayim Lemor. Hotziam leharogotam beharim uchotam me'al panei ha'adama shuv mecharon apecha v'chinahem al hara'ah le'amecha Zachor LaAbraham LaYitzhak UYisrael Avadecha Asher Nishbata Lahem Bach Vatadaber Alehem Arbe Etzarachem Kechochvei Hashamayim V'kol haaretz hazot Asher amarti Eten lazarachem V'nachalu le'olam Vayinachem Adonai al ha'ara Asher diber la'asot le'amo.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Mi sheberach avotenu v'imotenu v'orechet. Kroina. Kim, what a name. Kroina Basle. I love it. I love it. Every time I Kroina. Babu shalta לכבוד המקום לכבוד התורה לכבוד השבת בשכר זה הקדוש ברוך הוא שמע ויצאנו מכל צער ותוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיה. May the source of life bless you, having come forward this morning for an aliyah and also having now being a hamlet owner up here in the neighborhood. We bless you also with this move, Mishana Makom, Mishana Mazel, that with the change of place, even though we'll miss your physical presence back in New York, but maybe as everything comes back together again, we never know. Who knows? I know that you kept the apartment or something. I don't know. We'll be able to see you in presence, but here, up here in this community as well, that you have a continued sense of ease also in this transition as well. And also Vayinachem, that this word Vayinachem, which means to comfort, also means to remorse and regret. But I want to bless you not with remorse and regret, but a willingness to turn around from anything that needs to be, where you need to say, oh, I'm going to do this differently. Right? The change of heart, the change of mind, the change of place is also a sign of deep flexibility and strength and courage. And that also is a nechama. That's a comfort, the ability to make a change. And I know that's your business. You're in the change business for people. You're in the transformation business. So may God bless you with that gift for yourself, even as you give it to so many others as well. Kroina. And maybe a little bit about your ancestors on this immigration Shabbos. When you want to say Kroina, was heißt Kroina? Where's it from?
Actually, it's from, it was my great grandmother's Hebrew name, and she was from Kiev. I forgot where she was from and texted my uncle during the services and said, where was great grandma came from? I forgot. So she was from Kiev, and then like on one side it was like Kiev in Poland, and then on the other it was like a Russian somewhere in Russia that was once Poland, and I think it was called something like Shatema or something like that. I always forget these things, but now I'm in New Paltz, or I'm in Highland, so it's been quite the journey, and this is actually the first home that I've actually purchased, anything that I've owned, so it's a big deal. But I'm really excited, and thank you, and we are now neighbors. Yeah. Oh, and Corona, by the way, means crown, so it's sort of apropos to the
So Corona, the crown. So it says when it comes to owning property, it says God says, "Ki gerim v'toshavim atem imadi." You are all refugees with me, God says. And then on that, the rabbis and the Hasidic masters say that God also is a refugee, as it were. God is looking for a place to live always. And God says, hey, is there a vacancy in your heart? Is there a vacancy that I might, I'd love to set up shop. I want to live with you, in you. And so there is a deep sense within the mystical tradition, as you know, of that from the beginning, from the crown, from the keter, from the place of purpose, that God, as it were, wanted from the beginning to have as the last place to live here in this world, in the things that we walk through and the things that we embody in the ways that we walk through the world and in the world. And so Gerim v'toshavim atem yimadi, even right in these places where we set up shop, that God also says, bring me with you. So Hashem should be with all of us in all the places that we live and all the places that where we come to settle, as it were, to rest. And so invite you, if you're able, to please rise for the healing prayers for those in the community who need healing at this moment, if you're able. We bring to heart and to mind all of those who are holding some brokenness, holding something in body, heart, mind, and spirit, and the frequency of healing for the Shuvei Lev, for those who are of broken heart. Inviting you to write those names also into the chat and see the names of those who have been brought into our midst here on the screen in front of you on the Shabbat. הרופא לשבורי לב ומחבש לעצבותם. הרופא לשבורי לב ומחבש לעצבותם. עונה מספר לכוכבים לכולם שמות יקרא. Blessed source of healing, we pray for healing, and we invoke the name of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, David, Shlomo, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, Dinah, Naomi, and Ruth. All of those who have come before, may there be a healing in body, heart, mind, and spirit. May there be healing. Shabbati mezor ufor krova lavo, hashta bagala uvizman kariv, and nomar. Amen.
Remembering our healthcare workers in our community, those who tend to those who are ill and those who need help. Dr. Judy Fried Siegel and Dr. Mickey Fagan and Dr. Ariella Noy, Dr. Yoni Barnhart and Dr. Fairif Pasteru. Ease their fears, their own fears and their trepidations, sustain them, source of all breath, healer of all beings, protect them, and restore hope to our social workers, Melissa Stewart, Natasha Brodsky, Celine Liska. Strengthen them that they may bring strength. Keep them in health that they may bring healing. Our teachers, our school staff, those who come out of retirement to help those who are on the forefront. Bless the sacred work of their hands, and may this plague pass from among us speedily and in our days. Amen.
Amen. Inviting you also at this moment, as we get closer to the putting the Torah away, also to think of those who are also being remembered this Shabbat as well for the Mourner's Kaddish. Please rise if you're able as we return the Torah, as it were, to the Ark, and we take with us the teachings of this morning. יהללו את שם אדוני, כי נזכר שמו לבדו, הודו על ארץ ושמיים, וירם כהרם לעמו, תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל עם קרובו, הללויה, הללויה. מזמור לדוד, הבו לאדוני בני אלים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, איי איי איי, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו ישתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש, כל אדוני ענן למים אל הכבודים, היי אלי 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 דידי אלי 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 דידי אלי Hi, lai, 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 diddy, lai, 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 hey, na, 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 hey, na, 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 na.
ישבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון, וקייר קידם כמו עגל לבנון, וסריון כמו בן רמים, איי איי איי.
כמו לאדוני חוזר למוזש, כל אדוני יביא מברך, כי לאדוני ידבר קדש, כל אדוני יכול יגלוז ויחס ובוב, יגרבו עשו והיכה לו, כולו אומר כבוד.
אדוני למה בול ישב, ישב אדוני מלך לעולם, היי אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. דידי איי 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 ים דם דידי איי 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 ים פם 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 פם.
ונכון יומא שוב אדוני ברבבות אלפי ישראל, ומה אדוני למנוחתך אתה ועונתך כהן חייל בשוט צדק. וחסידך ירננו בעבור דוד עבדך, תשב בני משיחך, כי לקח טוב נשאתי לכם. תורה ועשי אל תעזובו.
עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה, ותומכיה מאושר. דרכיה דרכי נועם, בכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש חדש ימינו, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Okay, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. השיב אותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים. Rabbi Mira.
Vahashevota
Ashevota
elevavecha
en levavecha
ki havaya
Ihavaya
hi Elohim
Iha Elohim
ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד. ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד.
One day, one day, one day. Into this beautiful community, into this precious container in which yearning and learning and now turning towards the heart has brought us to this moment of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. The Kaddish, the Aramaic prayer that lifts up the names and the memory and the presence of loved ones. And so today we remember, within the first week of loss, the first week known as Shiva, we hold your uncle, Ben, Shalom ben Moshe Leib Shulamit, Carolee Kamen, Bunny Whaler, and Baxter Primus. We also hold Angela Lamb, Margolis, Leslie Robert Axelrod, Charlotte Figman, Seymour Borstein, Hank Wesselman, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Marie Sinyanyan, Shlomo ben Kalman Seymour, Miles Seaton, Martin Burzow, and Rachel Peikin. And all of these, please say their names as you read them. Rebecca Cohen, Gerald Bregman, Daisy Menkes Klein, Marianne Goldstick, Jay Goldstein, Seymour Brodsky, Vera Goldman, Rafael Rios, Gallardo, Seth Lesnow, Myrna Feldman, Sarah Malina Sigmund, Evelyn Goodman, Arthur Siegel, Jason Andrew Brodsky, Dr. Norman Cream, David Winograd, David Silverstein, Harriet Bloom, Shirley Siegel, Benjamin Woltelushkin, Belt Baldridge, DeForest Stoll, Magdalena Leva, Nancy Trigger, Barry Kowski, Barry Rifkin, Shirley Gatzik, Tav Sparks, Annie Etsy, Irene Weiss Miller, Maggie Yusuf Buxbaum, Jean Foreman Shore, Sojourn Mel Weitzman, Susan Pesach Plager, David Zimmerman, Ruth Schaefer, Phyllis Randman, Sybil Miyoshin Taylor, Tilly Feingold, Rabbi David Cooper, Robert Grates, Robert Jonathan Sachs, Mark Evan Beitman, Zati, Charlie Dixon, Ido Sheffi, Ollie Javits, Harry State, Max Javits, and all of those who are here in the chat area as well. Blessings to all of these names and lifting them up as well. We lift up loved ones and lift up those on this, of course, Refugee Shabbat, those who are being remembered as well, those who did not make safe passage, who were not given safe passage, those who were turned away, those who suffered at the hands of inhumanity and an undignified response to their call for help. We lift them up as well. And if it is your custom to stand for the mourners, please rise at this moment. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabbah Be'alma diverach Yerusei v'yamlich machusei b'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv imiru amen יהי שמי רבה מבורך בעולם, ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה על שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו, אמן. יהי שלום רבה משמיה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו וברחמיו יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל. And let us say amen. Amen, friends. If you are not standing, I invite you to get a little dance on for the next couple of minutes, a little end of service dance before we come in with our announcements. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kemalkenu, Ein Kemoshihenu, Mikel Elohenu, Chandonenu, Michem Alkenu, Michem Moshie, Oh no del Elohenu, Adonenu, Don Malkenu, No del Moshienu, Baruch Elohenu, Baruch Malkenu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Elohenu, Atahu Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shetiru. Lefanechai, Toret Asamiyeh, Hai na 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 na. Shabbos, everybody. We are so blessed to have had from 9 o'clock until now 3 hours and 15 minutes of Torah, Avoda, and Gemilut Chesed, of learning Torah together, of singing praise and recognition of the preciousness of life, and raising our radical amazement quotient, our AQ, amazement quotient. And so in this moment, we have an opportunity to lift up a cup of blessing, but first we have some announcements to make. So first of all, into this cup of blessing, which we'll get to, thank you to Suzanne Kachko for your beautiful laning, and Netzi Dalit for your beautiful laning, and for the Aliyah, Suzanne, we're really with you. Mamash, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Many blessings to you, especially from a Glitziana like myself. So good to see you, a Glitziana. We have some announcements to make for everybody. Lots of amazing things are coming the rest of this weekend and also in the days to come. So I know that big thank you to you, Evie, and to Michaela as well. I know it's not easy. You have some mouse issues going on with your mouse, so we're going to go to the announcements. If you want me to do it, I can do it. Oh, we got all of our clergy team is coming. Awesome. No, it's okay. Look at all these amazing people, you know, behind the scenes. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Michaela. Wonderful. Okay, so the Romemu adult education is in full swing, right? So the well is an opportunity for people to drop into these incredible courses taught by remarkable teachers, Shelley Fredman, Rav Shoshana Mitrani Knapp, and of course our very own Rabbi Dan Kohler Esses at the Beit Midrash. So all of these courses have begun, but you can still join them. And we also have a yeshiva, believe it or not, with 5 opportunities for study and for prayer. I'll be teaching a course on exploring the Buddhist and Jewish crossover areas in Jubu living, as many of us are Jubus and Hujus and Hinjus, in addition to other deep classes, right? So all of our programming is for everyone. The yeshiva is a little bit focused more on contemplative and mystical teachings than the adult education. All of it is available for everyone. So avail yourselves. Rabbi Mira.
I'll be availing myself of this too. A forum, Vote 2021, a mayoral candidate forum. And I think yesterday I did this march alongside those who are calling for the fund for the excluded workers. And I believe some of them were there marching alongside. So this is hosted by the JCC Manhattan, and the foreword, keep your eyes peeled. The next one is, all of these seem like urgent things. For the sacred people and sacred earth, yes, join our community, Jewish community in New York City in the 11th hour of the climate crisis for spiritual grounding and bold action. Call for the passage of the CCIA in New York City, March 11 at 11 a.m. And keep your eyes out again on Zoom. This will be part of a global day of action. And yes, if you need help scheduling a vaccine, if you want to help others schedule their vaccine and you're having a hard time, contact chesed@romemu.org and we will somehow help you navigate this.
Yes, indeed. One of the things that we aspire to do, and so the where are we here? So in the coming weeks, we have some opportunities for deepening and for learning. The Kohenet Shabbat every year is an opportunity to join with Rabbi Jill Hammer and her Kohenet community. That's March 20th, so 2 weeks from this morning, 2 Shabbatot from this morning. It'll be a Kohenet Shabbaton. Also, the kind of trying to find out where you guys are here. 1 second. Where is the second screen? Drama. Here it is. Where's the second screen? Can't see what you're up to. I'm just reading off of my own. But if you're up to Yom HaShoah reading, Lori Walco, our lay leader every single year, brings all of us together for this profoundly moving ritual that was started, I think, with B'nai Jeshurun. BJ started this years ago. We come together to read the names. One small book of, what seems to be an endless book of names of individuals. And this reading of the names is very touching and very profound. And it'll be taking place this year. Yom HaShoah is from April 7th on Wednesday evening. And Lori always brings people together. So please participate if you can. It will be, of course, online as well, like all things. And in 2 weeks' time from yesterday, we'll be changing our services back to 6:30 in honor of daylight savings, which is, right, the clock is, the days are getting longer. So we're going to be springing forward and pushing our services to 6:30 as well. And lastly, this weekend, Rabbi Mira, there's a lot going on for Refugee Shabbat. Tonight, there's a Havdalah, right?
Yes, there's a Havdalah, a Shabbat Havdalah on this link. And
at 1:50
have like
tomorrow,
an
there's a
embrace
panel.
into perspectives on the global Jewish movement for refugees.
Okay, wonderful. So thankful. And so here we are into this cup of blessing. Now it's time to put some blessings into this cup. Okay. We're thanking people again. We thank you so much into this cup of blessing to Michaela C. in Belgium. To you, Evie, thank you so much, even with your mouse problems, for supporting all of the davening today. The over 100 people that were with us, and to the entire Romemu team, to the staff, to Rabbi Kohler Esses for this morning's open book, to you, Ben Pearlstein, for davening this morning together with Rabbi Rivera, into this cup of blessing, right? All of the different towns and hamlets and places that people have been and have brought with them. Here's to my mishpacha, my family, my father, who left Berlin in 1938 with his younger brother, Joe, whose birthday was this past week, my own uncle, Joey, whose Yortzeit was this past week, whose birthday actually was this past week, and into this cup of blessing, all of you. Vishamnu b'nai Yisrael et ha-Shabbat azot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam brit olam. Beini ubein b'nai Yisrael ot ki le'olam ki sheshet yamim. Asa Adonai et ha-shamayim et ha'aretz. Ubayom ha-shvi'i Shabbat vayihi nafash. Al kein berach Adonai et yom ha-Shabbat vayikadsheu savri chaverai. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei pri hagafen.
Amen.
L'chaim. L'chaim, everybody. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim. So good Shabbos, everybody. Let's see. Let's make our way around the horn. Let's see who's here. There was some interesting, wonderful people here. So let's spotlight some. Let's see. Shabbos. I definitely don't need myself in the spotlight. Shabbos, guys. Good Shabbos from David. Good Shabbos, Sandra. Marcel. Shabbos. Good Shabbos, Max. Good Shabbos, Lisa. Andy. Sharon. Shabbos. Koina. Rabbi Jesse, hey, Shabbos Rabbi. See you over there. Shabbat Shalom. Tomer, Shabbat Shalom Tomer. Port Washington, Shalom Bracha Lechem. Shabbos Jill. Shabbos Lars. Shabbat Shalom. Yandananai.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbos, Rabbi Mira, good Shabbos.
Rabbi Jesse. Cohort 2, Gen Network.
Have a wonderful Shabbat, everybody. Edith Sidney Foster. Shabbos to you. Shabbos Mara, Shabbos Alan, Shabbos, friends. Jen. Who else is there? Robin, Shabbos. Adele. Lord. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbos, friends. Many blessings to you all. We'll see you in the week ahead. Hey, Jamie, say a Shabbos to your pop for me. Shabbos.